They probably need one too. I think they need one too. Thank you. There you go, Tom. Yeah, I guess we all kind of managed. Got a whole group here today. Are we ready? Good. Okay, we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. We'll do roll call. Carrie Stuckey, here. Shane Cardo.
Here.
Kate Rose.
Here.
Eric Dibzinski. Did we hear anything from Eric?
Eric is joining us.
Oh, he is.
Eric, can you hear us? Yes.
Okay. Tom Jones
Here.
and Councilmember Marshall.
Here.
Okay. We'll go ahead and move on to item number 2, the approval of the agenda. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
I move that we approve the agenda.
I'll second that.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All right. And then item number 3, approval of the minutes for our meeting on January 8th, 2024. Were there any questions or concerns, comments? Okay. Can I get a motion to approve that?
I make a motion to approve the minutes as written.
Second.
Okay, all in favor? All right, so the minutes are approved. Next, we will move on to item number 4, public comment. Did we have any public comments today?
So we've had one written comment that I will share on the screen.
Okay,
And then we have two members of the public signed up to speak.
okay, great.
Yeah, I can read it. I think it's the same one I have for my, in here for my director's update, yeah. Okay, yeah, so this is from Darren McCoy. Whidbey Island is ready for a large venue for public gatherings, indoor performances, and recreation. We have thriving annual events, performance organizations, youth programs, and communities of all kinds that rely on innovative leadership who will make cultural development a priority in Oak Harbor. Not only is it imperative that we explore the feasibility of these advancements, but it is vital that we do so regularly and conscientiously for the purpose of finding the right moment to act.
Okay.
Okay, and then we have Laura Renninger.
Good morning, commissioners, Brian, Brandon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Laura Renninger. I am a 4th generation Oak Harborite, and I am the founder and president of the Oak Harbor Gary Oaks Society. So I have some happy news for you this morning, and then I have a few suggestions. A discussion at the end of your January Parks Commission meeting centered around lack of advertising brochures for Oak Harbor on the state ferries. A comment was made that we have to do something, we have to have something to sell that's worthy of inviting people in. Another comment was made stating coming soon attractions versus what we have now. So I'm very pleased to report there are now 2 Oak Harbor brochures created by our group and now stocked on Washington State ferries. Funded partially by the City of Oak Harbor Lodging Tax Committee grant and partially by the Oak Harbor Gary Oaks Society. And you should be having the brochures passed along to all of you. The first brochure is a self-guided Oak Harbor Gary Oak Tree tour and map. The second brochure is Oak Harbor's giant acorn scavenger hunt and coloring activity sheet, and both of them are printed on really nice thick paper. So we signed a contract with a third-party company to stock both brochures, and they are on display for the Keystone Port Townsend Ferry Run and the Mukilteo Clinton Ferry Run. Yay!
Yeah.
A suggestion for the Parks and Rec Commission for 2024, please consider promoting Smith Park, which predates the City of Oak Harbor's incorporation and has been used since early settlement times, and recently added to the Washington State Historic Register. That's a big deal. Besides Smith Park, there are only 3 city-owned parks in the whole state that are on the register. 1 in eastern Washington and 2 on the west side. The closest one to us is in Linden or Ferndale, I believe. So, big deal. So our group is in the process of designing a plaque for the park, and you're going to discuss that, I think, item H on your agenda today. A ceremony put on by the city would be a great way to commemorate the park in 2024. The city could also highlight Smith Park on your website with a special link emphasizing the uniqueness of the landscape, the fact that the trees are our city's namesake. This is something that Oak Harbor Parks and Rec can help celebrate in a big way that sets us apart from other parks on the island. Lastly, the Interpretive Center at the wastewater treatment plant. Consider doing something innovative with that space. Since its grand opening about 4 years ago, there have been just a few signs parked in the big south-facing windows that have to do with explaining wastewater treatment. The space is not actually an interpretive center that people can enter into, at least it hasn't been. Consider letting local nonprofits and other groups in Oak Harbor use that window space to put up displays to educate the public, like the glass window space for displays housed within the lobby of the public library, the Snow Isle branch of the library. Lots of people see those displays, and there's like a wait list, a long wait list to get your name on it. I think you can only have your things in there for like a week or 10 days. Just an idea. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much.
Can I do a technical thing? The mics are kind of echoing, so we had them all on. I think we'll have to turn them all off. And then as you speak, just hit it in the little green line will go on. Am I ready?
Hello, nice to see all of you. Some of you are friendly faces that I've seen before when we went before the previous Parks Board. I think some faces are new. I'm Kyle Renninger. I'm a 5th generation Whidbey Island resident and also the Director of Special Projects for the Oak Harbor Gary Oak Society. I just wanted to say thank you again for the Parks Board, the Commission's support for the Smith Park Washington Heritage Register. I'm happy to announce, as you probably already know, that the State Department of Archaeology and Historic Preservation approved that back in fall of 2023. And so that joins one of only 3 properties in the city of Oak Harbor to have any sort of state or federal recognition for its historic integrity, which is pretty neat. So we currently are working with Brandon and Brian to put a plaque in the park that commemorates the Washington Heritage Register status. It's pretty common for these types of historic properties to have some sort of commemorative plaque. So I'll be looking forward to jumping in and adding more color on item H. So thank you again so much.
Thank you. Did we have any other public comments?
That's everyone who signed up, but if you want to call to the audience.
Okay. Was there any other public comments? Okay.
My name is Timothy Stoker, and I've been here in Oak Harbor for about 27 years or so, and I'm an active member of the community, active citizen, active volunteer, and I kind of an advocate for youth and youth programs and sports and activities and things like that. I'm here today as just somebody who's, I guess, somewhat concerned. You know, we've been working on some baseball renovation, or the baseball field renovations down at Windjammer specifically, to try to address some of the deficiencies and the other things that have kind of compiled over the last 5 to 7 years. Parks Department has been very active in working with us to try to address these situations and come up with a plan and strategy to do so, and have worked valiantly with us in that effort. Today I'm here because I just have some concerns about, there was a recent ITB that went out. It was an invitation to bid to do the work, to bring the fields up to a certain standard and so on. And there was some questions submitted by contractors, as is normal in the ITB process. And some of the answers that were provided, I guess I just had some concern about some of those in regards to the material that we would be using that was originally spec'd. And then I'm also just concerned, I guess, about the diversion from the original plan that we had been collaborating and working on and kind of coming together to address these issues for the last couple of years. Throughout the change in the Parks Department and all of the changeover from different people coming and going and things like that, there's been different things said and promised, and I think it's just important to try to get some of that cleared up and addressed within this project. So I would just like to draw attention to some specifics within that project, including the scope and materials used, and what it really is our commitment as a community to the youth sports, and more specifically in this case the baseball fields at Windjammer. So that's about all that I have today, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
And I do have some materials if you guys are interested in any of that. I have some materials that you can have and copy as well.
Yes, that would be great. Thank
Yeah,
you.
absolutely.
Were there any other public comments? No? Okay, we'll go ahead and move on then to our discussion items. Item A is the Recreation Center feasibility study.
Hi, good morning. So just bear with me. A lot of these items are a little more of update items, but I want to go ahead and just put them on the agenda in case you have any additional discussion that you would like to have, or action items, recommendations for council, etc. So we'll go through some of these quick. Some of them we can take some time to talk about a little more and dive into. First on here, the Recreation Center feasibility study. So the Mr. Oak Harbor Royalty did go and present to council. Some of you attended that council meeting and gave some input. We had additional input from community members, including Big Brothers and Big Sisters and the Pool Park and North Whidbey Pool Park and Recreation District, in support of doing a feasibility study. We also had a council retreat yesterday. We had a lot of good information given about policies and procedures, and then had an exercise around priorities. I think it ended up being number 2 on that list was a recreation center, sports facilities, places for youth and adults to go and recreate. We did submit a legislative member's request for $200,000, sponsored by Clive Shavers. Dave Paul was also in support of that, as well as our Senator Ron. Clive is the sponsor of that, so when our leadership went to Olympia, was able to meet with legislators. That, as well as a proposal for marina purchasing support, and our purchase for our police department were also included in that, and all looked very favorable. Normally, the state is more interested in supporting implementation and construction projects than planning, but all three of our district representatives seem very supportive of this. So we're very hopeful that we'll get some funding support as far as that goes. We are going after several RCEO grants, Recreation Conservation Office grants, in the next coming months, and some of those will align with doing planning around a recreational sports facility. Along with that, we do have the $80,000 that was appropriated and approved by council in the budget for a Parks and Recreation Master Plan. We're ready to, I think we mentioned in the last one, we were just about there. We're about ready now to put together that RFP to do that plan. So we'll probably go over a draft of that in the next committee meetings, and happy to answer any questions you have or any discussion you guys want to have around Recreation Center feasibility study. And as you've seen from some of the public comments, council has been getting, I think some of the council made comments, hey, we'd like to hear this, from the community, not just from the Recreation Department saying this is a community need. So it's nice to see that the public have been trying to put that message forward in front of council.
I have a question. I don't understand what the process is. You mentioned $200,000 that was being proposed. What is the process for that? Is it an administrative process of some kind, I suppose?
So the $200,000 will be for the feasibility study. And the feasibility study will look at everything from proposed locations, identify a cost recovery plan, an operational budget, construction, preliminary estimate. Sometimes they'll even do a conceptual drawing just to give a visual to council and the public of what a recreation civic center could look like. They'll just go out and do kind of a needs assessment and help us identify what are some of the amenities and features that we would want to include in this building. What's the proper makeup of sports fields, field houses, fitness areas, community spaces, gathering spaces for trainings or conferences or things like that.
Okay, let me restate that. What is the approval process for the funding?
Oh, so that will be presented by the state legislators, and they will either approve that as part of their supplemental legislative session, or if they don't, it's on their radar. And then when we get around to the regular session next year, where usually there's the bigger asks, we'll probably go after funding for implementation at that point. If we don't get approval from the state for the feasibility study through that, we'll look at other grants that are coming up, or look at if there's possibly some funding that we have in certain projects, which I gave you a sheet, we'll go over that a little later, of current projects and funding sources. Is there an opportunity to redirect some of those to do a feasibility study?
Okay, thank you.
Brian, you might have said, but I might have missed it. What is the timeline for them? When are they requesting that $200,000?
That's happening right now, so we
Oh,
should
okay.
hear something next month or so.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Brian, how will the public be involved in that, in the feasibility study, if at all? Would that be the timing? Would they be involved at that
Yeah,
stage?
it'll be a very heavy public outreach process. So it's very much like a needs assessment. So there'll be, surveys. We'll have interviews with stakeholder groups, with other agencies, partnering agencies. We've had a couple meetings with like the Boys and Girls Club that received. I think they got $250,000 in state funding for a sports court, activity court. And they're looking at possibly expanding that. They're looking at another $1 million to maybe enclose that or make it kind of a larger sort of field house. So we had some discussions with Representative Clive Shavers and the director of the Boys and Girls Club and I and Brandon was there as well, if there was some alignment to what we were looking at doing. But they're certainly going to be a stakeholder as well. So we'll identify those, and we'll probably go through that process as a commission on what that stakeholder list that we'd like whoever we select as a firm to do that feasibility study to meet with. And then there'll probably be some surveys, some, open houses and things like that.
Are there any other questions or discussion? Okay. Are we ready to move on to item B, sunshades at Windjammer Park?
So this was an ask from Councilor Heisen, and a little bit of a discussion we've been having internally, and just wanted to get it on your guys' plate for discussion and some of your thoughts. So there was a recommendation to look at, I'll show you a couple of visuals here if you can see that, to look at shade structures at Windjammer Park. And I think this is what Councilor Heisen had sent over, a couple of these sail type of structures. Another one that was shared by our Central Services Supervisor, Sandra, is one that looks a little more like this. And we've talked quite a bit previously in the past about putting in shade structures specifically for some of the events like music in the park, especially with the alignment of where that pavilion that is and at sunset, sun kind of getting in the eyes of participants. So this is something we'll kind of look at. There's a few considerations. We do get quite a bit of wind down there. Pretty much all of the providers, vendors for shade structures recommend, taking these down during when there's an anticipated storm coming in. They usually have a wind load of about 75, sometimes upwards of like 90 miles an hour. So they're pretty robust, but I've seen these crumple as well. So we would probably put in some permanent posting, and then we can take down or put these up as needed. Another consideration is now with the forestry grant, we're planning on doing quite a bit of planting of shade trees in that park. There were several trees that were removed when the park was renovated with the construction of the clean water facility. We'd like to put some of that back in as well. With the Gary Oak Society representatives here, I'm sure they would love to put some more Gary Oak trees in the park also for good shade structures. So that's really all I have to present to you, just some ideas. We don't have anything specifically budgeted for this, but this does fall under Windjammer improvements, which we do have budget for. And so when we talk a little more about those park improvements we're doing with that funding, this is probably something we should consider. The council has asked us to just look at, and wanted to see if you had any comments or thoughts on this.
Yeah, the shades is one of the number one things I've heard from people for Windjammer Park, especially around the splash park for parents. They're baking in the sun while their kids are playing for an hour or whatever. This seems like a relatively inexpensive ask. Is there, I know you said it would be coming out of the Windjammer improvements funding. How much funding is available for that?
Total. The 6-year total is $1.28 million. And that's kind of broken up between our current, let's see, for fiscal year 2024, we should have 834,000, and then we get another 250,000 in 2027. And I agree with your assessment. I went out on just a random day last summer. I think it was June. after we had opened up the splash park, and there were about 300 people in and around the splash park and lagoon, and another 150 or so just spread around the park. And anywhere there was shade, there's people crowded in there, right? So definitely amenity that I think the public would like to have there.
So what would be the next steps to getting that done?
If this is something that you would like to pursue, perhaps in our facilities committee, maybe even our playgrounds committee, we could probably talk about it in both committees. Talk about location specifically, talk a little more about pros and cons of those locations. Anytime you put up a structure, you're removing sight lines or open space for play. So we want to be very purposeful about where those locations would be. We need to talk a bit about what style, something that blends in well, is attractive, is not too much of an eyesore, and then also alignment, so it is as efficient and usable as possible. And then we can come up with, have some discussion on how much of a budget you want to put towards that. Keep in
Okay.
mind, we have a lot of priorities that we want to get done in this park, so.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Were there any other questions on that item? Okay, let's go ahead and move on to item C, pickleball court design update.
Okay, so we did make a selection with RWD. We had a meeting, a virtual meeting, and some of you were involved with that. With them, just negotiating the proposed budget and refining down the scope of services for the pickleball court design. There was a lot of cost savings we identified we could have if we narrowed down and made a selection on location. The commission had identified 4 locations: Neal Park, Holland Gardens Park was the original intended site for the pickleball courts several years ago when the city decided to do this project. We, as a commission, have looked at Fort Nugent Park as the site to build after we moved away from the school district's Rotary Park renovation, with some considerations around both the pros of the amenities that are there, the storm drain, parking, things like that, as well as considerations around the school district and what their plans were for possibly building a school there. We identified 2 other locations that we just wanted to look at. One was Sumner Park and one was Windjammer Park. So we did a site visit last week with Don Campbell and went to each of those locations. They were very excited about both Sumner Park and Fort Nugent Park. I think Fort Nugent was leading out a little bit, even with the considerations of we already have a lot of activities that are programmed there, some parking issues possibly. We looked at the realignment of the entry if we were to lose that current entry with the school being built on the site. We also talked about possible procurement of the additional land south of there to expand the park and maybe having a secondary entrance. Sumner Park was the other one they're pretty excited about. Very flat area, plenty of space to expand large pickleball facilities. We already have our tennis courts on site. We looked at where electric and storm drain would be on there. 2 different sites, a little different makeups, pros and cons to both, but we should be getting their revised proposal with the budget as well as the recommendation on a site here soon, and so we'll bring that back to you guys. If we get it before our next committee meetings, we'll talk about those in the committee and then bring it back to the commission. But moving along nicely right now, I think we have it planned to get their revised proposal and then take that to council on the February 28th workshop. You just want to put that on your calendar for anyone that could come and support or speak to that. And then we have it on the March 5th. We'll probably just put on consent agenda as long as council is good with the proposal and we're able to address all their questions, just have that agreement for approval on March 5th, and then they'll get to work. Any questions you have on the pickleball design and planning?
Were there any other issues in the preliminary discussion besides location?
No, I think it was just making sure that we would be happy with the budgeted proposal. We have $50,000 from REIT funding that had been set aside for renovation of the courts that we're using for this planning. That's going to be a tight budget for them, but they're going to try and make it work as close as they can. If they need a little bit more, I think we have some accessible funding sources we can pull out of that, so it's not affecting general fund, and we can have a discussion with council at the workshop about that.
I have just a little tidbit of information. So I just learned this weekend that Special Olympics is adding pickleball to their sports array.
Oh, awesome.
So
I didn't
that's
know that.
exciting. Yeah.
That's good, and we do have an active Special Olympics program in the area, and would love to partner with them on some programming.
Yeah, our basketball team took silver this last weekend.
Yeah, awesome.
I'm sorry, will RWD be at the subcommittee meeting? Is that what you said?
Yeah, they'll come in if council has any questions for them.
Okay, thanks.
Where at Fort Nugent are you looking at placing this potentially?
We're looking at that northwest corner of the park, near where the current other entrances. We haven't gated off, but that's where the start of the disc golf course is, right there. We have access to storm drain right there. It is, if we were to put in a secondary restroom, that corner of the park is a good location for it as well.
How would that impact then the disc golf? Because that's like their first hole, right?
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
And we've already talked about needing to realign the disc golf a little bit. There's some conflict with, especially around like the soccer fields. We have, we're going to talk about it here in a little bit, but we have met with our designer for those courses. And I don't know that we have it on his scope to do the reconfiguration of the courses, but Eric Dupinski, I think he's on, he could probably speak to that a little bit on reconfiguring the course there, if we end up going with that site.
Eric, did you have any comments about the disc golf course there? All right, any other comments or questions about that item? Okay, let's move on to item D, ball fields improvements update.
All right, I'll turn this over to Brandon to give a quick update on that.
So right now, that's why I was a little late. I apologize for being a little late. I was coming from the ball fields area. So right now we have made a homemade drag mat. We didn't have a nail drag. So we're working with the materials and the equipment that we've got. So we've drugged the fields multiple times. We're actually down there working right now. We've rented a sod cutter. We've cut back the lips of the infield that was making the ball jump up. So we're going to regrade those back down. But we're doing a general cleanup right now. We've sprayed weeds in the dugouts. The infields actually look a lot better than they had in the past. And I'm working to get more material for the start of the spring ball field session right now, to fill in any of those low spots and get the fields to be playable for this year. And then really, I don't want to spend too much money on the tweaking of the fields in the spring because we're going to do this renovation in the fall. So just trying to get the fields to an acceptable level for the spring ball, and then hopefully in conjunction with this bid process, have a construction company take over in the fall here after the spring ball, in between fall ball, and hopefully get the new fields. I don't have a timeline on what those construction companies are bidding right now. That should close tomorrow, I believe.
And our central services supervisor, Sandra Place, is here if you have any questions about the process for that.
Thank you. So I do have a couple questions. I've read through this invitation to bid and then the kind of the Q&A. And in the invitation to bid, it's very specific that they're to use diamond dust 4-in-1, but then in the Q&A it says like materials can be used. What's a like material to the diamond dust? I mean, I went and I read their spec sheet and it seems like a pretty specialty product. So what would be considered a like material for that?
It is a specialty product in the aspect that this guy is mining this specific material. Other fields are not only using this only pumice material. There's a plethora of different options out there that would be considered the like material. That's what that is. It's just not the diamond dust solely. We're saying if you have another product that is going to perform like diamond dust will, then we would be willing to accept that and look at it.
And that's really it, just performance specs of drainage and, wind, dust, loss, performance and things like that.
Thank you. And then it looked like for Field C, the entire infield was supposed to be cleaned out. And then one of the questions was, are we doing the entire infield? And then it said, no, just from base pad to base pad, the walk-up area is going to remain grass. What does that actually mean?
So the walk-up areas are, if you're walking up to walk up to the plate, from the outside of the base path on the first base side, everything in between the outside of the left or the third base side, outside of the first base side, everything in between there is what we're going to remove. And the reasoning behind that was we have irrigation around the home plate. So that is, the grade there wasn't the issue. The actual angle of the field is off, it's skewed. So we wanted to, this is to realign all that field. Is the elevations were so bad on that field that I didn't think that we could redo that field with just leaving the infield in there, because the pitcher's mound and first base and home plate were so far off that we needed to cut everything out of there and restart on that field. But around the outside, we can still use that. We don't need to go into that area to get our grade for the field.
So outside of the base path is not considered part of the infield. Is that correct?
I did not consider it part of the infield.
Okay.
I don't.
Because the way I kind of read that answer was like, we are just skinning the base paths itself and then leaving that interior area as grass.
No,
okay.
That is
Yeah.
not how I had explained it.
Okay.
It was basically, it was first base line outside of first base line,
Yeah.
outside of third base line, everything in between to the arch of the infield
Okay.
is to be cut out and replaced.
Gotcha. And then the big important question is, I see the funding is 200, or the projected budget is 200 to 300,000, and where is that money coming from?
That is the Windjammer fund.
Yeah,
right?
Windjammer.
Yes.
Windjammer.
So
improvement.
that is the total that we have
Uh-huh.
for softball, soccer, Little League. That's the total number. That's the total number that we could possibly spend. I do not anticipate spending the full 300,000 out of this
Okay.
at this time.
All right, thank you.
And we're looking to have grant funding pay for half of that. We went after a $125,000 parks maintenance grant, a local parks maintenance grant. We were right at the cutoff. We were like number 41 of 40 that were awarded. If anyone doesn't go through with that project, we then will get that funding. But we'll go after a similar grant to try and meet half of that. That's the intent.
Did we have any other questions or comments? Okay, let's move on to item E, disc golf and trails update.
Okay, so we had a really good meeting with Eric McCabe. Pull up. Eric McCabe with Dynamic Discs. We went over the site plan, the scope. We talked a little bit about the budget. We did some revisions as far as that goes. This is the revised proposal. There we go. You see that all right? Okay, here's a revised proposal from Eric. We're actually going to get this broken out into two. So it's separated between professional services, which includes the disc golf course and the hiking trail system, with two 18-hole courses for $20,000. And then the additional 22 is for the equipment that will be installed. Anticipate there'll probably be another maybe $10,000 for in-house work and equipment rental, like mini excavators, things like that, to cut out the trail system. So the next steps is Eric will put together a draft design layout for the trail system. We'll go out and he's going to come and do a site visit. We'll go and mark those trail systems, both for the disc golf as well as the walking trail. We'll probably have a little field trip with you guys to go check it out and get your thoughts on the alignment and talk a little bit more about trailhead considerations and things like that. So that's where we are in that process. Just quick update. Any questions you guys have?
Funding source?
So this comes out of that the parks implementation plan, which was original the $364,000 from the Harbor Heights. What was left of that project?
Okay, let's go ahead and move on to item F, Angel of Creativity and Flintstone Park improvements.
Okay, so we have the shoreline variance approved, the building permit is approved, everything is approved. So now we're going to pre-construction. We have a meeting next Tuesday at 2 o'clock for the pre-construction meeting. I don't think we need to have everyone there, but it probably would be good to have one rep at least from the Parks and Recreation Commission on that meeting, just to stay in the loop with planning around that. We are working on a site plan for some renovation of the park prior to doing the installation of the statue. As City Councilor Munns has suggested we're going to relocate the Flagstaff to Memorial Park, the Veterans Memorial there, which is a good appropriate location for that. We'll probably do a rededication of that during the Armed Forces Appreciation Day. We are going to widen that entry a little bit and cut off the end of the parking lot and remove the asphalt from the rest of the roundabout. That'll all be seated back in, so we'll actually be expanding usable park space quite a bit. We'll change the reconfiguration of kind of the planters that we have there. So we'll have a little more green space to work with. We can talk about another phase of other improvements we want to do to the park after all these projects are done. We've budgeted $11,000 for the reconfiguration, and we'll do most of that work in-house. We'll also probably put in some safety lighting in the park at that time, and the statues also plan to be lit as well. So we'll have a little bit of lighting in the park for that trail that goes past there. We did end up having to move the statue a little further into the park because the high water mark identified by DNR was actually further back than what they had originally told us. So we had to redo that and get that shoreline variance change reapproved. But we'll have more information and talk a little bit more about the schedule at the pre-construction meeting. So just an update on that, and then looking for a volunteer that would like to jump in on that meeting with me on Tuesday at 2 o'clock.
Tuesday the 20th at 2 o'clock?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, I could be at that meeting. Is that here?
That'll be an online meeting.
Online, okay.
Yeah, virtual meeting. Let me double check that date. No, I'm sorry, that's not Tuesday. 21st. It's Wednesday. Wednesday at 2 o'clock. That work for you?
Yep, that'll work.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments about that? Okay.
Thank you. What are we going to do with the plaque that's on the flagpole? Because it says Flintstone Park flagpole on
Yeah,
that
it does.
thing.
Right. Yeah. So when we do the rededication, we'll probably have a new plaque created that recognizes and honors that original gift to the city, and talks about probably a little more about the Veterans Memorial as well. Has a nice history of it. If any of you like to see the wording of that, I transcribed it onto text because it's kind of hard to see on the plaque itself, but it's a nice little dedication. It was given to the city about 40 years ago, and is in service at the Navy for about 40 years. It's pretty old, but yeah.
Any other comments? Okay, let's move on to item G, Independence Day event.
Okay, so the Independence Day event is going to be moved to Windjammer Park this year. So the carnival and everything, food vendors and all that will happen at the park. We had a good internal meeting with Mikhail and the chamber. Looked at the site map planning, planning for where we would put everything. We're trying to figure out best locations, especially for the carnival. We have some wet spots in that park without adequate drainage in some areas. So we just want to make sure that that everything is done in a safe location. We also looked at where we would launch the fireworks from. Had input from our fire department and talked with the fireworks vendor on safe distances for the fallout zones. Right now, I think we're tentatively planning on having most of that on the west side of the park, with the fireworks possibly being launched from that trailhead to Fred Marsh, and then having the food vendors more on that north and west side. When we get a site map from the chamber, we'll share that with you guys, just getting feedback you have. But that's the tentative plan. They're kind of working on refining that, but a lot of good discussion and input. So just to be aware that it'll be at Windjammer Park, and we're doing our best to make sure that we have it laid out well. Parking is also a consideration we're looking at, where the public can park. We had a bit of discussion about the parade as well. Last year, we asked them not to block access to the base and the marina, so they reconfigured their staging area. We're looking at possibly moving that staging area back over to the library, but only closing the road during the parade coming out. Possibly having an officer on site to go ahead and let residential traffic back and forth as needed. So that's also a tentative plan. When we kind of get that firmed up a little bit, we'll share more with you. But just wanted to open for any comments that you had on location, parade route, staging, closing of roads, things like that. The parade is planned to go down Pioneer Way. it's going to be a tight space, but what they're looking to do with the grandstands, I think in this kind of the same location, right? There by where the acorn statue is. Yeah. Any questions, comments, feedback?
Okay. So the parade going down Pioneer Way as it normally does, or it's going down all the way down Pioneer Way instead of Bay Shore?
Yeah, all the way down Pioneer Way.
Okay. All right. Any other questions, comments? All right. Let's move on to item H, Smith Park plaque.
So Kyle was good enough to, as they're working on their plans, bringing this kind of proposed location, and it's all right. I'll just have him speak to that. He's been working with Brandon on this, if you don't mind, Kyle.
Hello again, everyone. So we are currently working with Brandon. We've got a meeting with him coming up this Friday, right? So this is just an initial draft site plan of what we'd like to suggest. So again, you know, most of the properties that have been successfully nominated and put either on the National Historic Register or the Washington State Heritage Register have a commemorative plaque. And so the Gary Oaks Society would like to work with the city to put a plaque in the park. The location that's indicated there is right next to the existing 3-panel interpretive sign. So that would be in the northeast corner of the park near the jumble of boulders. The reason why we suggested putting it next to the interpretive sign is that it definitely adds character and context to that interpretive experience. When the interpretive panels were put in, of course, it was not yet on the register. So we thought that that would be a logical place. What we'd like to do is source some of the granite pavers that were used to put around the interpretive sign. We've got a source for those. So just simply extend that kind of existing plaza that's already there next to that interpretive sign just over a little bit, and also source a boulder. We've got a local granite boulder that we'll be suggesting we use. So the great news is that the Gary Oaks Society would like to donate the boulder as well as the plaque and the cost of the pavers. So we would only lean on our city partners to ask them to professionally install the boulder into the park. The good news is the boulder is not so big that it can't be moved, so it's movable with a backhoe, which is good, and we'll pay for the bronze plaque. Are there any questions that I can answer for you today?
Not a question, but a comment.
Sure.
As usual, so well planned out and presented. And I just really want to express my gratitude for the work that you've done and continue to do. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would just echo that. I think the location looks really good, and I'm excited to see how it turns out.
Wonderful.
Do we have any?
I'll just add, the Gary Oaks Society have been really great partners with the Parks Department forever. And, Kyle did a ton of work to put together the historical registry application. And so we're grateful to him for that. And this is a very well-meaning, meaningful celebration of that. I agree with Laura Renninger's comments about doing good ribbon cutting and putting a little bit of a spotlight on that celebration. And so that's something we'll work on.
The native wildflowers will be blooming in the park yet again early this spring. So if you like wildflowers, we've got camas, shooting star, chocolate lily, fawn lily, and columbine in there right now. So do stop by the park. And again, we're just really grateful for our memorandum of understanding with the city, where we are able to collect Gary Oak wood from downed trees and limbs. And this project is just, again, one of those outcomes of it. So we turn those into fundraising items. And then from that, we then get to sponsor awesome projects like this, like the ferry brochures and others. So thank you again for the MOU, and thank you for your partnership.
Thank you. All right, we'll go ahead and move on to item I, security camera discussion.
There we go. Okay, so we're applying for WCIA, it stands for Washington Cities Insurance Authority, grant for a park vandalism mitigation project. There we go. So this project is addressing issues that we've had specifically at Fort Nugent Park. WCIA provides these grants to help reduce liability exposure. The city has received a few grants over the last several years addressing safety issues. So Fort Nugent project was identified as one that we wanted to do this year. We have 6 soccer fields. There's about 11 fields when you break them up into youth fields there. 2 football fields, a baseball field, playground, basketball courts, disc golf course, concessions, picnic shelters, restrooms. It's one of our premier parks, very heavily used, very loved by the public. It's also one of our most heavily hit as far as damage and vandalism and graffiti and things like that. This is almost an everyday occurrence, definitely about a weekly occurrence, and we have everything from just, tagging to malicious destruction of the amenities and equipment that we have there. And this makes a real impact, a real fiscal impact. When we get around to budgeting time, this is a line item that we're going to bring to council. Brandon is pulling those numbers and tracking the damage and the cost of that to the city ongoing. And besides just money, it takes a lot of staff time to, and we end up having to close restrooms or things like that, close off areas of the playground or whatever until we can get those repaired. It's inconvenient for the public, so just costly in a lot of different ways. So we're looking at security cameras at the park. This is meant to be done in kind of a phased project. This grant would address the first phase, which is focused around the concession area in the restrooms, where we see a lot of the damage happening. And also providing safety in the park, especially in the shoulder seasons when we still have a lot of activity going on, especially with like the football and rugby leagues playing. We had gotten comments from the public, hey, we want access to the restrooms, at later hours. And we do want to accommodate them, but we also want the public to be safe. So this will address that first phase. The second phase would put cameras at the shelter and looking at the playground. And then third phase would actually be live streaming. The police department is the only one that has access to this stream, but it will allow them to just kind of monitor a little better. Right now, this is recorded. So if there is an incident, it is reactionary, but the police department would use it in their investigations, hopefully try and identify a suspect and also look for recuperation of those costs to the city. Oh, let me go back up. So the grant application has been put together. Wendy Horn and Sandra Place and Brandon and everyone have been working on pulling this all together. We're requesting $23,000. And then phase 2 and 3, we will budget for during our regular biennial budget process. I'm going to go back up here just to the map, just so you can see that. And for any questions or discussions, you guys have any recommendations. Okay.
Okay. All right, we'll go ahead and move on to item J, subcommittee updates.
Thanks, Sarah. Anything you guys want to talk about? So our committees this last month been mostly around the contractors, and so we had I think we already talked a little bit about that with the planning, and then we also had Carrie help us with recreation coordinator interviews. So we did select a final candidate, and we did second interviews with our top 3 candidates, and then we made a selection, and that is going out right now. So hopefully we'll have confirmation of a selection, and maybe at the next month meeting, we'll have a new recreation coordinator to come and introduce you guys to.
Can we go ahead and schedule our programs and play?
Yeah, so good segue. We have the Parklands and Sports Facilities Committee already scheduled for the 26th, Monday. For the Programs Committee, I know we were kind of waiting to see what Kate's schedule is going to be. You have a very full plate, Kate, so we want to accommodate you.
Open during the day, especially before like 3 p.m.
I would say that typically Tuesdays and Wednesdays are.
Tuesdays and Wednesdays are good days?
Yeah, those are typically the best days.
How would Wednesday the 28th work? We do have the city council workshop that afternoon. We could do a morning of the 28th. That work for you, Carrie?
Yeah, that works. Anytime after 9 is fine for me.
I'm good till 3.
Okay. 9 o'clock?
9 o'clock.
Okay, that works. Okay, so then we'll move on to the Parks and Recreation Director report.
Okay, give me 1 second. Okay. Although this whole meeting has felt like a big update, but thanks for your patience. So let's see here. First of all, so right before this meeting, we had a development review with the Hilton developer. So this is development that is looking at going at the Hal Ramley Park and Imagine Food Forest area. We had some discussion with them about reconfiguring the park. So the hotel will take up most of where the property behind the food forest and a good portion of the food forest, and then kind of a half of that Hal Ramley Plaza. The remaining does stay as a public city park. We had talked with them about possibly just gifting that over. There's some regulations with gifting property or doing a land swap or something like that, just with the consideration of, because we have a lot of transients that come over to that area, if they're going to have a public plaza, if it is private property, they're able to trespass people out of there if needed. It's a lot easier than doing it as a public property. But also looking at what's that plaza look like? You know, who's that really going to benefit? Is it going to be kind of a beautified plaza space that's really benefiting the Hilton, or is it really going to attract the public to want to access that space? So they're tweaking that design a little bit. Originally, they had kind of the Hal Ramley Plaza remaining, put in there and kind of beautified it, and they were trying to stick in a portion of the food forest down along the street front. that creates a problem because it removes sort of the sight line into the plaza, kind of hides it behind kind of a more bushy, hidey hole area. So we asked them to kind of reconfigure that. They're going to, their landscape architect is going to work with us on what that looks like. We'll probably talk about it in our committee meeting. I can show you guys the tentative draft proposal landscape plan that they have. That's going to be tweaked a little bit. We do need to have a discussion with Imagine at some point. Right now, this is all preliminary, still in development planning. A lot of these pre-cons don't end up going through, but this one feels like it has the momentum, and they're moving along at a good and appropriate pace that I feel like it definitely is likely that this will happen. So we need to talk a little bit about where we would relocate a community garden with Imagine. We'll probably wait until we're a little further in the process, but we want to kind of get it on their radar here soon, and then just get your feedback when we have a little more of a good tentative draft landscape plan for that public space. And probably need to have some discussion about, is there land swap opportunity? Do we keep it as a public space? Is there opportunity to just let the Hilton have that, and then maybe city procure, they swap with another place that maybe we could do a community garden or something else. So just get it on your radar a little bit and some thought around it, and then we'll dive into a little more in the committee meetings. Mentioned that we did make selection with the recreation coordinator. We are starting to look at designs for park identifier signage, and I'll show you an example. So we had a discussion with the Arts Commission just to get some of their thoughts. This is a sign I did for all the park identifier signs in the last city I worked at Glenwood Springs. I like this style, something with the city logo, something that is very easily identifiable. We have kind of a smorgasbord of designs with our park identifier signs, and a lot of them are either wood signs or they're not very easy to read. There's a number of reasons we want to do this besides just having a good aesthetic and a uniform look to our park identifier signs, also for safety reasons, so that responders, whether it be police or fire, can identify an address location easily from the street. But just want to have a little bit of discussion on a style that you guys like. The colors, we could either have them match kind of the city logo colors, or if there is a color scheme that you guys like, we want to look at materials. One idea was to have our commission did like the idea of maybe some wooden signs, but then a signage either layover on top or inlaid that is bright contrasting colors, kind of like this, where with the blue and white that really pops out, easy to identify. But something that we're working on. We can have some discussion in an upcoming commission meeting if you like. We can talk about this in one of our committees as well. But we're looking at budget. It'll probably be about $8,500 to do all the park signs. So we'll put that into the next biennial budget. But once we have a good design and a material that you guys like, we'll go out and get some quotes and get a better estimate for that. Also with the Art Commission, they identified and made a motion for recommendation of installation for the Gate of Inspiration Kennebrew art piece. And they're looking at the, one second, let me pull this up. At the trailhead to the Fred Marsh trail on the west side of Windjammer Park. Okay. So looking at this corner right here, right across from the park parking as you go onto the trail for that art piece.
I'm sorry, what was that for?
It's for the Kennebrew Gate of Inspiration art piece. So some of those art pieces you might have seen around are Temple Blue. That's located right in front of like Harbor Freight. And then let me think of the name of it. Another one is located at the Boys and Girls Club. That's a kind of stacked crayon looking kind of art piece. I could probably, let me bring up a picture of it. Meditation, that's the one that's in front of Boys and Girls Club. And then see if we can find a picture here for you. While I'm pulling that up, any comments on the location for that art piece?
I was with the Arts Commission when we did the tour down the pathway to look at different potential sites for that. One of the things I really like about that location is it creates a nice transition from the park across the street. It's welcoming and inviting to then keep going, keep continuing down this trail. There's more to explore. So I feel like that was an excellent choice.
Brian, I know that the Arts Commission had talked about the idea of making that trail kind of like a art path trail. Is that still something that they're talking about?
Yeah, I think they still have that intent of wanting to do that, what that looks like. They had some discussion on whether it should be like a cultural art kind of celebration trail or how that looks. We are intending on making some improvements to that trail. We have a lot of standing water during rain times on that trail. We get public comment quite a bit from that. In fact, I just had one this morning with some pictures. And so we are going to spend a little bit of that forestry grant on improving that trail access. But that's still the intent, yeah. I'll find a picture of it. I'll send it to you guys just so you can see it. But anyway, that's the proposed location.
Thank you. The other two you mentioned, Temple Blue and Meditation, they're pretty bright colors. Is this Gate of Inspiration a really bright colored sculpture too? I mean, how does that fit with the aesthetics of just that nature area? Yeah,
no. Both Gate of Inspiration and Three Totems are a little different color-wise. They're a little more neutral colors. In fact, I think Three Totems is just the rusted, what do you call that? Patina, right? Yeah, and if I can find a picture of it, I'll send it to you, and you can give me any comments on it as far as you feel. But So just want to talk real quickly. We get questions a lot in the committee meetings just about, okay, well, what's planned as far as projects? So this is the capital improvement projects that are currently budgeted for or identified in our capital improvement plan relating to parks and recreation. So we have the pickleball courts, and how you can read this is a little bit of a breakdown of what we're anticipating the costs will be, they're called the cost assumptions. It talks a little bit about how the project will be funded, so revenue sources, REIT is our real estate excise tax. Real estate excise tax 2 is very restrictive on what it can be spent on, but park improvements is one of the things that it can be spent on, and kind of our preferred go-to if we do have park improvement projects, because there's so few other things in the city that we can use it for infrastructure-wise. So that's where the pickleball courts came out of. We have our Smith Park improvements in there for total of 60,000. Right now we have about 11,000 that we're working with. So that'll include the stone pillar sign that'll go in, redoing the pedestrian path, lighting in the gazebo, and safety lighting, and then just providing a little more of a historical aesthetic to that park, making kind of a historic themed park, since it is the first park that we have in the city, as Laura Renninger stated, predating the incorporation of the city. We have our park plan implementation. So this is the funding that had been set aside for Harbor Heights. So our trail project will come partially out of this funding, and then we'll probably put the remaining towards any sports field planning or implementation. Urban Forestry Management Plan. So this has the 1.7 million. We'll also add on, if we're awarded the DNR 250,000 that we applied for, will be added to this. The forestry is paid out over 5 years, so this is broken up between staffing, the forestry plan, and then arborist improvements and landscaping and beautification around the city. Athletic field renovations. This right now is not secured, so we're going after RCO grants to help do improvements for the fields. We are doing the ball fields right now with some Windjammer funds, but looking to supplement that, and then also do improvements to the fields at Fort Nugent Park. 80,000 for the Parks and Recreation Master Plan. We'll start working on that RFP now. Trail feasibility study will start next year for the 7th Avenue wetlands. And then we have a number of pocket parks. These are really just placeholders. As right now budget for 2027. We'll probably put in probably just start with the adaptive playground for this next biennial budget. We might move some of these forward and actually come up with better funding sources matched with grant funding to get some of these done. Senior Center generator is being done along with some other facilities. All of our facilities are kind of at the end of their life, including City Hall. They're not well built for earthquake safety and things like that. So improvement to and some future renovation or replacement planning needs to start happening. Those are discussions that are happening. The parking lot, we're looking at getting some state funding for that. We've had some discussions with our state reps. We have a federal relations firm who came into a site visit. They're going to be working on the marina projects, as well as some of our infrastructure projects in the central development area. And the parking lot at the center was another one that we did a site visit with and have on their list to help us out with. And then Windjammer Park improvements, those are ongoing right now. We're addressing the ball fields, the splash park improvements, and then we'll be doing some lighting and plantings in the park, things like the shade structures. We're also looking at possible amphitheater for special events. And that's what's current. This is a budget planning year. We started off the process with our council retreat yesterday. We'll be working on the department budgets here in another month or so. We'll start that process, and we'll have you guys involved with that as we go forward. We'll probably do maybe a little financial training, government budget planning training. We had a really good presentation given to council yesterday. I think I might take that and tweak it for the commissions. Very applicable to you guys, especially some of the commissions that oversee budgets. Let's see here. And then we had our public comment, and we already read that. So that's all I have for updates.
Any comments, questions? Okay.
In the minutes, you'd asked for input on the website. Specifically, you asked for commissioners to go onto the website and provide feedback, any suggestions. So I have a few. I don't know if you want me to do that now or give them to you separately.
That'd be great.
Okay. One is, I know I'd seen the new quarterly brochure somewhere online, but I couldn't find it when I went in to the Oak Harbor site this time. So it should be on there. It should be readily accessible. I just couldn't find it. Secondly, there's a number of different links. And one of them is for rentals. And that's really where all your program information is. But you would never know it by looking at the title rentals. So I would suggest retitling that to programs, facilities, and rentals, or something to that effect. And I notice you have, I forget what they call it, let's see, Civic Rec looks like an off-the-shelf software program for programming, which is really nice, by the way. It's a really good thing to have, but you wouldn't know it was there by looking at rentals. So my suggestion would be to change that title. And then on the projects link, I'm not sure that that's up to date. Doesn't appear to be. There's 2 projects listed. One is, I can't remember what the 2 are. But I have another question related to that. What exactly do we want to put in there for public knowledge? In other words, do we want it to be only projects that are approved, funded, and underway? Or do we want to make it more like projects and initiatives so the public knows the different things we're working on, even though they may not have met final approval for funding or otherwise?
Yeah, and I would say both, yeah. So pretty much everything on our website needs to be updated. We did get the department updated to Parks and Recreation, but you'll see under like mission, it still says the mission of the Parks Division. So we need to redo our mission statement, redo the objectives, the contact information on that front page. Right now, it has senior services listed there. And so our senior services division, which is now our recreation division, is where you find all that. So the activity guide is under there, as well as programs and the programs link. So that probably needs to be relabeled as recreation, right? And as far as the projects page, yeah, so we want to update that with all the current projects where just hey, for the public, this is where we're at with each project currently. And that will be a kind of living document that gets updated as we go along. You know, we've selected a designer, or we are done with construction documents and we're now going out to bid on this, as well as future projects. This is what has been budgeted and approved by council for implementation that we'll be doing with dates of start dates with that. So
There was another link that said camping, and you open it up, it says, we don't have camping.
Right, yeah, there's
So
a lot
I
of, yeah,
don't
there's
know
a
if that
lot of
requires its own link
outdated
or not.
yeah, camping, adopt a park program, which doesn't currently exist. Brandon's working on revitalizing that program. We want to update all the city parks with amenities. Right now, it only shows like 4 of the parks. We have 33 parks. So as well as our memorials catalog for like memorial benches and things like that. There's a lot more we can do besides benches that are beneficial to the public. So we want to redo that. We'll probably work on that as one of our committee projects. Yeah, so
It's a,
good feedback and
yeah, to me, it's a really good portal. I mean, it's so easy to find. If you go oakharbor.gov, it comes right up, Parks and Recreation. There it is, anything you want to know. So it's easy to find once it's up to date. So I encourage you to keep working on it. I think it's a really good, good start and easy access for the public.
yeah. And Liz has been leading out a lot of those changes, working with Sabrina on updating all of that.
With the website, someone asked me a question and I didn't know the answer. When you're going in to book a facility, and I tried to do it at home before I came here, when you're in the cart, you have to go through several steps agreeing to various things. Under attachments, there's a facility use application form that opens up as a PDF, and it, you know, you're supposed to initial all these things and fill out your name and what you want to rent. But then there's no, like, it's not clear, do you print that out? Do you send it anywhere? Or do you just go back to your cart and click confirm? It's just very unclear, and so the person I know who was booking a facility said, I opened the PDF, but I didn't do anything with it, and then I still booked the thing, and I don't know if I was supposed to do anything with that. So that one's kind of unclear. I don't know if that's something that can be looked at.
Ms. McHale, yeah, we can clean it up. That was our old form. Actually, when they agreed to the terms and conditions, that's just the printout of all the terms that we typed in the site. So we'll make it more clear that here's a PDF if you want to print it, but by clicking yes before, then you're just agreeing to these. But we'll make it less form-looking and more.
Okay,
So that
yeah,
it's okay.
it's just confusing,
Yeah.
so, all right, thanks. Any other comments or questions for the director update? Okay, we'll go ahead and move on to member comments. Brian, is there a plan to do an Arbor Day event again this year?
Yeah, so we were looking at doing it a little bit differently with the forestry grant. We would have the resources to help the school district do an Arbor Day event at every school. We would just give them the resources, the materials, books and stuff like that. It would take a little more of the staffing with volunteers and some of the school staff, but it would allow us to have a larger kind of impact. We're still waiting on the signed contract agreement for that grant from the Forest Service. And in talking with the city administrator, he suggested, let's stick with picking one school again this year, and then we'll look at doing that larger kind of district-led, citywide event next year. So, yes, we are. We haven't identified a school yet. I just had that conversation with the city administrator on Friday. So we haven't had a chance to sit down and talk about where we would want to do it. Open to suggestions. We did it at
Broadview.
Broadview, yes, last year, and the year before that, Olympic View. Yeah. I think we had talked about possibly doing it like, what's the one on Heller? Hillcrest, yeah, possibly Hillcrest is one, but open to if you guys have any thoughts or suggestions. Otherwise, we'll probably just touch base with the school district and see if any the board or Michelle, superintendent, has a suggestion.
Any other comments, questions?
And that event usually happens at the end of April.
Okay. I had one more question then, unrelated to that. I was looking at the council priorities that was gone over yesterday at the retreat. And under Parks and Recreation, I just had a couple questions. We've got Windjammer Park partnership. What does that mean or consist of? And then topsoil. It just says topsoil, so I didn't know what that was about. I don't know if Eric.
That was before my time.
Okay.
I believe the partnership aspect of that was with the Rotary Club in regards to the windmill. And then what we've been told is there's not enough topsoil in the park itself, and so adding more topsoil to allow for better grass growing. And because if I understand it correctly, Brian, the grass tends to die during the summertime, and
Windjammer Park's a real good example of that, where
Yeah.
we are lacking topsoil. In fact, there's parts of the park that are built over old asphalt courts and things. So.
And then part of the partnership aspect with that was if there's a developer who's removing dirt for a specific project, if perhaps they wanted to donate that towards that topsoil as well. And so we discussed that as a possibility.
Okay. And so the topsoil, is that just Windjammer Park or all parks?
It was Windjammer specific.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. Okay. Any other comments, questions? All right, so then we'll move on to item 7, determination of future agenda items.
I'll just say on this, we really look to you guys to build your agendas, the issues that are important to you. And we'll talk a lot about those in committee meetings and then bring them back as part of a commission meeting. But we want the agendas to be led and, discussion happens with you guys. Otherwise, you end up just listening to me give you updates on all the stuff we're doing, which is a lot of stuff and there's a lot of information to give you guys. But yeah, I would love to see what items that you want to take in advisory to council, which is really your function to bring items for consideration and expenditure of city funds or policy as a recommendation to council.
It seems like we have a pretty good list from the last month that we haven't addressed on some of these. So that's a good start.
Is there anything specifically, Tom, that you want to discuss?
Well, I'm interested in what Brian mentioned with some education on budget process and budget things. And also, I think what's key to us is the prioritization piece, because there's just so much, not just on projects, but on a lot of other things. It's just hard to sit down and go through all of those and prioritize them. It seems like the facilities subcommittee probably can do a pretty good job for facility issues, and then the programs committee could probably do theirs. Might be a better way of going about it and then bringing it forward.
Sure.
Okay, we'll do a budget training and go over the department city priorities that were updated yesterday.
Okay. Any other suggestions, comments?
I think by next meeting, we should have a determination from the legislature about the feasibility study funding. I think their session ends the first part of March, and so we should have an answer at that point. And so if it's a yes, then we can start talking about, what does that look like, engaging the public, having some of those open houses, potentially going to different facilities. I know Alex Warner mentioned yesterday the Starfire facility. Maybe doing a facilities tour and taking a look at and having some pictures and examples that we can show to the public when we're ready to start engaging that that conversation about what other communities have done and what that potentially looks like. And so I hope by our next meeting that we'll have some kind of determination. It sounded positive. I was part of that trip to Olympia last week, and when we talked to our legislators, and they seemed very much in favor of the project and seemed to think that they could get it passed through the supplemental budget. So hopefully by then we'll have an answer.
Okay, anything further? Are we ready to adjourn? Okay, if there's nothing else, we'll go ahead and adjourn the meeting.
Thanks, guys.